Lejla, please tell my story. I met my boyfriend when I was 18. He was considerably older than me, and within weeks of us dating, he moved in with me. We both had children from previous relationships, and from the very beginning, he gaslighted me about his ex-girlfriend. She had made accusations of physical and sexual violence, but he would say that she's crazy, and I believed him. It turned out that he'd actually been arrested close to 50 times for his violence towards her. But I had no idea about Claire's law at the time, so I was none the wiser. He was so amazing to begin with. He was loving, affectionate, doted on me. He would buy me gifts and take me everywhere. He made me feel so lucky to be with him, and he'd often say that he chose me over all the other girls that were in love with him. Not to mention how charming he was to all of my family and friends. It really felt like I had met the love of my life. After a few months though, his behaviour began to change. He became very controlling as to who I could speak to, where I could go, who I could see. I'd be on the phone to a friend sometimes and he'd be on the background, glaring at me or whispering rude remarks to make the calls end quickly. He also started to enforce his religion onto me, and I slowly but surely cut off all my friends. I needed to keep him updated about all of my whereabouts and couldn't wear certain clothes as he said that it would bring shame onto him. He would purposely sabotage any opportunity I had to further my education by belittling me and knocking my confidence. He would make me feel so low that I couldn't concentrate on any of my work, so I put my education on hold for him. He played on all of my insecurities, and before I knew it, I had isolated myself from everyone I loved, spending all of my time with him instead. I started speaking less and less to my family too. The first time he was violent was because I hadn't washed his clothes on time. He dragged me to the kitchen by my hair, screaming that if he'd married within his own race, he wouldn't be having these problems. I was shocked, hurt and confused because even after what he had done, all I wanted was a sorry from him. Instead, I was the one apologising and promising to do better. And for the next 4 years, he would strangle me, smack me, punch me. If I tried to walk away in an argument, he would fly kick me or stamp on me. Once, he scooped up toilet water and tipped it all over my face, telling me to drink it. In public, he would throw me out of a moving car and run over my handbag. At home, he would pull things on top of me like wardrobes, fridges, mirrors. He would open all the windows and doors in the house, screaming so loud that the neighbours could hear. He had no fear of consequences at all. I used to wonder why the neighbours didn't call the police, and then I realised it was because within a matter of days, they'd see us back together, laughing and joking as if nothing had happened. After attacks, he would play the saviour by bringing me plasters, bandages, bruising creams, telling me that he loved me and that I was the one that needed to stop being so silly. As crazy as it sounds, it did comfort me. The trauma bond was so strong, and I didn't tell anyone. I struggled with anxiety and never left the house. I just didn't know who I was anymore. My son would try to protect me, but that soon stopped too, as my boyfriend would threaten him. So eventually, he learned to take himself into the bedroom and hide under the bed until it was all over. To this day, he often brings up an incident when my boyfriend had punched him in the stomach. He was only 4. I never fought back. I was too scared to. What on earth could I do when he was twice my size? I found the more silent I lay, the quicker it was over with. I would cry and apologise and beg him not to leave me. I was desperate to make it work. I would post on social media pictures of our luxury holidays, luxury gifts, and tell them that he was the world's best boyfriend. I made people believe it. He would smash things in my home like the doors, TVs, mirrors, plates, cups, bowls, and he'd say, "I only smash things I know I can replace. I only mark you enough to teach you a lesson." I became an incredible liar, making excuses as to why I couldn't see anyone or as to why I had random bruises all over my body. Once, after breaking my nose, he took me to the hospital and told the nurses that I was attacked on a night out, and I just went along with it. I became trapped in a vicious cycle of abuse, full of highs and ruined by lows. I would lay and quietly sob, praying to wake up and not to love him anymore, and I wanted to reach out to someone, but he'd tell me that nobody would believe me, and my son suffered at his hands too. He was smacked, thrown, and locked into rooms. I'll never forgive myself as a mother. I couldn't protect myself and I couldn't protect him either. The violence was relentless. It's impossible for me to forget it. I begged him to kill me on so many occasions. The one incident that really sticks out for me is when he launched me over the banister of my stairs. With my son watching, he stamped on my face, covering me in spit and snot. I was screaming for him to stop. He stamped on my head so hard that I became unconscious at the bottom of the stairs. When I woke up, My son was wiping my face and cuddling me, whilst my boyfriend threw water over me for me to wake up. He said that God had put him there to teach me a lesson. When I discovered I was pregnant, he wouldn't let me have a termination. He promised that he would kill me and my son if I went ahead with it. I felt so trapped. I thought I was never going to get away from him. And so in my head, I just prepared to die. And the accusations of cheating, the sexual assaults, it didn't stop just because I was pregnant. In my sleep, he would use objects such as handles of knives and bottles, anything he could, to penetrate me. I would wake up and cry, but he'd tell me that I must be enjoying it because I was making noises in my sleep. I had no fight left in me. My son started to develop problems. He was anxious and he never wanted to be at home, and he was soiling himself regularly. After the birth of my daughter, I knew I had to leave. At just a month old, he threw her across the bed and he would count down from 5, telling me to put the baby down, or he'd beat me with her in my arms. Almost everything was a trigger for his violence. So in the end, I reached out to a friend and told her what had been happening and that I needed to get away from him. I became distant and he knew it. And in a bid to stop me from seeing my friend any further, he damaged her home by kicking her front door down so that he could get inside to attack me. He even threatened to kill my friend and her child too. This time, I had no choice. I knew I had to call the police. He was later arrested and released on bail. Conditions were put in place not to contact me directly or indirectly or attend our address, but this didn't stop him. It just made him lose more control. In his rage of me leaving, he smashed a car window over our daughter's head and was attacking my friend in the street. Of course, by now social services were monitoring the situation and the police were building up a case with the CPS. I was heartbroken and felt empty, but I knew at this point there was no going back. The violence, the threats to kill me and my children, the stalking, the harassment, the damage to my home, it all continued after leaving. My home was smashed to pieces, all my windows and doors knocked through, and building a case was hard. Evidence was crucial, so I recorded every phone call, every message, and filmed as much as I could. He was arrested 11 times and released on bail. Finally, after a kidnapping attempt, there were enough witnesses to have him arrested and held on remand. I knew I was doing the right thing, but I couldn't help but blame myself and worry about how I was going to cope without him. And a part of me didn't want him to meet anyone new. What if he was nice to them whilst I was the one that had to deal with all the trauma? My son would often dress up as a police officer at home and said that he wanted to keep us safe. Boarded up windows and alarms became our new normal. When the trial began, he pleaded not guilty. I stood up in court and spoke my piece. I didn't want the curtain. I wanted to stand in front of his face and show him that I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't a victim, but a survivor. Eventually, he did change his plea to guilty so he could have his sentence reduced, and my home was equipped with panic alarms, national police alarms, and safety measures were put in place for both of my children. I now have a restraining order that has no time limit. He knew all control was lost and that I was no longer going to be a victim. I have continued working and providing the best possible life for my children. I suffer with severe paranoia now. He's even had girls reach out to me pretending to be victims of domestic violence to get information from me or to see if I would speak on the matter, or even if I had moved on with another man. We have absolutely zero contact now, but on big dates such as birthdays and Christmas, I receive unknown cards in the post or private phone calls, but I give no reaction or response. My son has been affected so deeply by this trauma. He's had therapy and been excluded from 2 schools. He is unable to form and maintain friendships, and he has serious trust issues. It was discussed that he may have ADHD as he was smashing things up and hurting himself, reenacting the things that he had witnessed. After many interventions, he's now been observed as a child with severe PTSD and anxiety. My son's mental health is a direct result of the domestic violence he witnessed and experienced. He has self-harmed and attempted to take his own life. All he says is that he's sad and of what he remembers seeing in those years. We are now waiting for psychiatric assessments and hoping that this will get better. I know it will with the right help. I know that we are safe now and we are alive, and that in itself is an achievement. And the happiness, the freedom and peace I feel every day when I wake up, Knowing that I don't have to fear anybody or walk on eggshells or answer to anyone is second to none. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. It's just making your way through the tunnel that's hard. So please, ladies, don't ignore red flags. Please get help and get out. Please save yourself and your children from the same abuse that I experienced.